Handler.com/donate.
Mary had a little man. The fault.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
So the connecting of the dots between Mitch McConnell, the Republican agenda in Congress, such as it is, the special interest agenda fueled by dark special interest money, that's what that hearing was about. It wasn't about technicalities. It wasn't about who wrote the letter and how he characterized the letter. That's interesting. But what is deadly serious about it is the Attorney General of the United States of America was not telling the truth to the Congress of the United States. That's a crime.
So now we've had an explanation from many, many people about, who the real Trump base is, and it's not your neighbor, and it's not your father-in-law, and it's not Fox News viewers, although they've been lied to enough that they believe that Trump's acting somehow on their behalf. But the real base of the Trump party are the donors. The real base of the Trump party are the people who hire the lobbyists and put them on retainers for $30,000 a month so that those lawyer lobbyists only represent to Congress, to the Senate, to the Mitch McConnells of the world, to the majority, over and over and over again, the tax breaks they want written into the tax code, the regulations they need to be removed so that they can dump all kinds of crap into your clean water. These are the kinds of people that are supporting Donald Trump, that Donald Trump cares about, that Bill Barr cares about, because Bill Barr is a lobbyist. It's what he is. It's what he did. So as long as everybody could get clear on who Trump is really fighting for and who Trump is really doing things for, and of course, that is the billionaire class. And I'm talking about the global billionaire class. Trump is the it's so funny because people, in small towns everywhere who think he's, doing stuff for them. The only piece of legislation he has passed, the only major piece of legislation this president has passed is the tax bill. And most people agree that they got very little or nothing from the tax bill, or they were penalized because of the transfer of wealth that occurred in that tax bill from people who own homes to billionaires, to multi-billion-dollar corporations like an Amazon, like a Netflix. We think they're friendly companies, but they don't pay taxes. And they have billions and billions of dollars in income. So, the people that are sitting there just, lovingly, saying, look, I think he's doing what he can for, and, failing to acknowledge that he's not passed any legislation that would make any difference in their lives, and that this exactly is the economy that Obama actually created after the last recession, that the things that are working for us have been working for us for more than 10 years now. And that Trump didn't lift a finger to do one damn thing for you, nor will he, because he is answering to the billionaire class. He is the biggest globalist that has ever come down the pike. He's got global interests. He owns property globally. He makes money globally, and he is protecting his and his donors' interests. Bill Barr wants in on this. The Senate Republicans are they're getting paid. They get paid. The lobbyists, do fundraisers for them and funnel all kinds of money from their clients that they are representing to these senators. They then do fundraisers as part of the appeal of why senators even bother to talk to lobbyists, is because the lobbyist and the lobbyist law firm is going to have fundraisers, and they're going to funnel billions of dollars into the Republican Party this particular election cycle. So that they're protecting themselves from the end of the gravy train, number one. And we know this because the Democrats have passed clean government legislation. And they continue to pass even more and more legislation to clean up our government, to end gerrymandering, to make it easier to vote, all of these things. And we keep sending these bills over to the Senate where they die because the Senate wants the American people to suffer so that that's all that they look at every day. Why is it like this for me? I guess we're at full employment, so I must be a loser. No, you're not a loser. The people, it's low unemployment because people have more than one job. One person is taking 2 and 3 jobs. So, but she keeps sending this legislation over there, and they keep denying it.
So whether it's H.R. 1 or the gun safety, paycheck fairness, violence against women, save the internet, climate action now, the list goes on. And we will be sending more legislation. But apparently I have news for Mitch McConnell. He may consider them dead on arrival and the Grim Reaper for all of these actions taken by the House of Representatives. But they are alive and well among the American people.
Yeah.
And there is a direct connection. And really the probably biggest and saddest of all is while the Attorney General was sitting there withholding the truth from Congress, misrepresenting, being inconsistent in his statements. With shame. How could he do such a thing? But, again, having the support of the Republicans in Congress and the senators behaving in a way that has said to them, we don't care about the branch of government in which we serve. We're not even loyal to strengthening the institution of which we are a part.
That's stunning.
While we're sitting there, once again, the Justice Department was intensifying its assault on the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
And that they did their filing, their further filing to get rid of the entire Affordable Care Act. So that's what it means to people with pre-existing conditions. His sitting there in that arrogance. I don't care about your pre-existing condition. I care about the special interest in our country. That was the message.
That was the message. That he would lie, that no one can hold anybody accountable anymore, that the president is a unitary executive means that they can now do what the insurance companies want them to do in an election year, and that's destroy the ACA. Now, you would think that's counterintuitive, right? You would think Trump would get the message that being in court and filing, as they did while Bill Barr was testifying, a brief that actually destroys the entire ACA, which they said was their intention ever since a right-wing lunatic fringe judge in Texas said, oh yeah, you could destroy the whole ACA. There's now that the individual mandate has been zeroed out by Congress, you can destroy the whole ACA now. You could do the whole thing, meaning 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions, like me, like you probably, would not be able to buy health insurance at any price. So you would think that's counterintuitive. Like, why would Trump do that, when the election has truly begun? Wouldn't Americans actually feel that? Wouldn't Americans actually know that? Wouldn't Americans be livid? Because they tell us, that the people who are crisscrossing the country, who are campaigning for office, tell us that the American people, the number one issue that they bring up at the town halls, that they bring up at the rallies, that they bring up with their Congress members, with people who are running for president on the Democratic ticket, the number one issue they say is health care. So why would Trump do this? Why would he do this? Well, I'll tell you why. It doesn't have any prayer of passing the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will not allow Donald Trump to get rid of the ACA. Nobody with any sort of intellect believes that the Supreme Court would throw out a law that was duly passed by both houses and signed by a president to give people access to health care, okay? Nobody believes that the Supreme Court would do it, but Trump is doing it, and the Republicans are doing it because it helps them fundraise. And maybe they'll just get, a little diddling around the edges, like 2.3 million adult children maybe won't be able to stay on their parents' health insurance plan after 18, or rural hospitals will lose their funding, or, the insurance companies might get a chance to take the lifetime cap off of your insurance. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? You see? It's the special interests that are controlling it all.
things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Madam Speaker, did the Attorney General commit a crime by lying
He lied to Congress. And he lied to Congress. If anybody else did that, it would be considered a crime. Nobody is above the law, not the President of the United States and not the Attorney General. Being the Attorney General does not give you a bath to go say whatever you want, and it is the fact because you are the Attorney General.
Should he go to jail?
True.
Should he go to jail for it?
There's a process involved here, and as I said, I'll say it again, and how many other questions you may have, the committee will act upon how we will proceed.
Speaker Pelosi, last week you had said that you wanted your caucus to focus on the investigations that are already ongoing. Given the fact that you can't get information, given the fact there has been this unprecedented obstruction from the White House, do you think that the time has come to move that impeachment deadline up?
No, I think that the statements being made by the President of the United States has given a blanket statement that he's not going to honor any subpoenas is obstruction of justice.
It is.
I think that many of the statements that the administration has made has been about obstruction of justice. We are in a very, very, very challenging place because we have a Republican Party in the Congress who are complicit in the special interest agenda of the National Rifle Association, the fossil fuel industry, the
pharmaceutical companies, insurance
special
companies.
interest writ large. And so they're not going to say anything.
Right.
So that's why I say sometimes impeachment is the easy way out for some of these people because they know it will end at the Senate's edge.
Exactly. So this is the question. What do we do when we don't have a functioning democracy? What can Congress do? What can they do? And the reason why she's saying there's a process is because they're gaming it out. Everybody who cares about democracy, small d democracy, everybody who cares about checks and balances and the Constitution itself, all these people that used to wrap themselves up in the flag, and Trump is hugging the flag, and they love the Constitution and the Second Amendment and this amendment and that, they have no earthly idea that the president is violating the Constitution and that our country is looking more like we have a dictator and we're a banana republic than we look like a republic. Now, when we first got the republic, they said, well, what have you given us? The founders were asked, what have you given us? And they said, a republic. If you can keep it. They knew that if any of the three co-equal branches were no longer co-equal or were rendered inoperative, the whole thing would break. The whole system would fall apart. And the Senate knows that. And they want it to fall apart. They want to make this the oligarch's paradise. You remember the song Gangster's Paradise? I love that song. Been living all my life, living in again. Great song, right? That should be the theme song. Tell Ari. Ari loves rap. Tell him that should be his theme song. That should be all of our theme song. Gangster's Paradise is where we are. It's what we have right now. We have a blanket edict dictated by the president that says clearly he will violate all subpoenas. There will be no congressional oversight of this administration. There will be no questioning of Robert Mueller. There will be no questioning of Don McGahn. This is what Trump went on television to say yesterday.
I've had him testifying already for 30 hours.
So is the answer no?
And it's really, so I don't think I can let him and then tell everybody else you can't, because especially him, because he was a counsel. So they've testified for many hours, all of them. Many people.
So as far as you're concerned, it's really, it's kind of done.
I can't say, well, one can and the others can't.
Okay, so is it done?
I would say it's done. We've been through this. Nobody has ever done what I've done. I've given total transparency. It's never happened before like this.
So
Okay, let's just pause him right there because he has not given total transparency. As we all know, he did not sit down with Mueller, would not sit down with Mueller. His lawyers advised him not to sit down with Mueller because he would have lied to Mueller. Even his written answers in Mueller's report were considered to be inadequate. He was dangling pardons, as you know, for Michael Cohen. He dangled a pardon for Manafort. He dangled a pardon. And Manafort actually violated the terms of his plea deal because he was weighing the pardon dangling by the president, okay? He was threatening Michael Cohen, threatening Michael Cohen's family. Hey, why aren't you looking into his father-in-law? He's the one who committed crimes, warning people against flipping, right? Just, and Mueller tried to point out that his own staff, Don McGahn, pointed out that Trump was being silly. And he was being ridiculous when he was trying to fire Mueller, and that he wouldn't do it. He kept asking his staff, he kept asking the White House counsel, who does not represent him, but represents the office of the presidency, to lie and to put documents into the file that would be a lie, just like Donald Trump lied about the excuse letter he dictated on Air Force One coming back from Germany about Trump Tower, right? He refused to address any questions regarding obstruction, even in the written answers, even in the written part. And Mueller did point all these things out. So let's just dispose of his fantastical idea that he was so cooperative, and just remember that he will not let anybody testify to Congress, rendering Congress useless.
They shouldn't be looking anymore. This is all. It's done. Even my finances, it must have been looked at for $35 million. I assume they looked at my taxes. I assume that Mueller looked at my financial statements for $35 million, and having 20 people plus 49 FBI agents and all of the staff and all of the money that was spent, I assume they looked at my taxes, which are fine. And I assume, except they are under audit, by the way, I will tell you that officially.
So did they look at his taxes? That was a question that was asked in the hearing by Amy Klobuchar.
Mr. Attorney General, on April 27th, President Trump stated, Mueller, I assume, for $35 million, he checked my taxes and he checked my financials. Is that accurate? Did the special counsel review the president's taxes and the Trump organization's financial statements?
I don't know.
Can you find out if I ask later in a written question?
Yes, or you could ask Bob Mueller when he comes here.
Okay, well, I'll do that too, but I think I'll also ask you.
Excuse me? You cleared the president, and you don't know if part of the evidence was that Mueller looked at his taxes. Clearly the answer is no, Mueller didn't look at his taxes. You know why? It wasn't part of the scope of Mueller's investigation. Mueller was supposed to be looking at, and did look at, whether or not there were contacts between Donald Trump, Russia, and anybody on his campaign. And did they obstruct justice to try and keep Mueller from looking into that fact? The answer to the obstruction question clearly is yes. And Mueller said he couldn't indict a sitting president because of the OLC ruling. And the answer to the conspiracy, he said he applied the conspiracy to defraud the United States legal definition. And he didn't have sufficient evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't mean he didn't have any evidence. It also, he talked about collusion, and he said collusion is a term of art. So if there was collusion, we can lay it out for you that there was, but we can't charge that either because it's a term of art. It's not a legal, chargeable offense. But he did lay out the case for collusion.
Oh! Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And I believe that what was, absolutely enlightening and should be deeply troubling to the entire American public is that he made a decision and didn't review the evidence. No prosecutor worth her salt would make a decision about whether the President of the United States was involved in an obstruction of justice without reviewing the evidence. This Attorney General lacks all credibility and has, I think, compromised the American public's ability to believe that he is a purveyor of justice.
Should he resign?
Yes.
All right, so now you know what she meant, okay? Now I hope it's all become clear now that we've had 3 days to play some of the clips from Barr's Dog and Pony Show, which is what that was, and digest some of the comments that we heard after, where everybody agrees that Bill Barr is not a purveyor of justice. He is acting as Donald Trump's personal attorney and not the attorney for the United States of America. He does not fight for justice. And, you know, it's really interesting because I think if anybody is now charged with a federal crime by the Department of Justice, I would think that their lawyers would have a fabulous case in a court saying that the Department of Justice no longer represents the administration of equal justice under the law, that the Department of Justice is corrupt. The Department of Justice is political. It acts in a political way. This is a political prosecution of my client. And you know what? It's got a 50-50 chance of surviving a jury because obviously the country is split down the ass crack about whether or not Barr is a administrator of equal justice. And, to sit there and argue to a jury that the head of the DOJ is a political operative, and therefore any charges that come from any part of the federal government's Department of Justice is a political enemies list, or is a political hatchet job, or is a political job of retribution against somebody. It's plausible now. And that's the problem. And that's the greater problem. Now, the other problem is Congress has been rendered almost useless. And I've been saying, if you check my Twitter feed, I think I tweeted about a week ago that it was time to enforce the law and lock up Attorney General Bill Barr. Seriously, somebody's got to go to jail. And if we don't enforce the laws that we have with regard to contempt and actually follow it through to the actual arrest of Bill Barr, and the only, listen, of course the president could pardon Bill Barr. Let's, just remember that. But what would it do? It would get this to the Supreme Court really stinking fast. And I know that the Supreme Court's also been packed with lunatic, fringy people. It started with Clarence Thomas. It started there. It hasn't ended. We've got Kavanaugh now. We got Gorsuch now. Gorsuch's mother was held in contempt of court, right? So we know that they're on the political side of rendering useless Congress. We know that. So our best hope is these corporatists that got put on the court, right? The people who are part of the dark money, the people who got there because they defended the dark money, because they accepted Citizens United, because they said corporations are people, my friend, because they said corporations are people and the way that they speak is money. Sick. Corporations are not people. They are legal entities created in law to shield the risk taker, the person who sets up the corporation, from personal liability should it go wrong. That's all it is. It's not a person. It's a legal entity created in law to let somebody take a risk. I know this because I have a corporation. And the reason you set it up is so that you can try. Okay, you don't set it up so that you can funnel dark money into the Senate to confirm people who will say corporations are people, my friend, and the way that they speak, they don't use words, they use money. It's ridiculous. That is the beginning of the end of democracy. It was then, it is now. And now you're just seeing the logical conclusion of it with the Senate saying we're more loyal to the money than we are to the people because the people don't vote, because the people don't, they're too stupid. They're the unwashed masses. They're the proletariat. We don't think that there are people. We think that there are corporations. We think that there's money to be had. We think that there's corporate money. The people, what are they going to give? $1? Really? $1? $3? 27? Screw that. Why should I spend all my money sending emails to get $27 when I can have a fundraiser at Charlie Palmer's in the morning for breakfast and raise $6 million? Or I can go to the Comcast vice president's house and raise $6 million. Or I can, call the insurance carriers and say, don't worry, we're going to fight your having to cover people with pre-existing conditions in the courts. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Meantime, support us because we're the ones that are getting your back. We don't want you to have to come out of pocket. And, didn't you like it better when you could put lifetime caps on what you had to pay sick people? Didn't you like that better? Yeah, we did. All right, well, we got you back. That's what's going on here. And Congress has been pushed to make a choice. It's gone that far now, where the Attorney General of the United States is protecting those interests because finally the Republicans think that they have a president with no conscience, absolutely a total globalist. Money talks. People don't matter. I don't feel their pain. I don't see, all I got to do is lie to them every day, point them over there and say, it's those people. It's haggard Honduran housewives that are doing all this to you. And they believe me.
Believe me.
They do. So now Congress has to make a choice because the Attorney General just showed up in Congress and said, I'm going to lie to you, and there's pretty much nothing that we believe you will or can do about it. In other words, no congressional oversight of this administration, no questioning of me in a meaningful way about this Mueller report. I am going to take sentences out of context. I'm going to claim that the president was the victim here, that the president who was excited about Russian help, who asked for Russian help, whose children were delighted about Russian help, who had meetings hoping they were going to get Russian help. They were the victims here. Not the American voter. No, Donald Trump. And now Donald Trump is saying he's not going to allow Don McGahn to testify. And he's not going to allow Bill Barr to go back and answer Congress's questions. He's not going to allow anybody who previously worked for him to show up and answer any of Congress's questions. So Congress has to make a choice. What can we do? Game it out, know what his counter to it will be, and be prepared for that. And let the American people see it all. No more behind closed doors testimony. No more. Everything's got to be on the television and it's got to be in the public domain. Everything that happens from here on out has got to be televised. The revolution will be televised. What if somebody defies a subpoena? What can Congress do? What can the president do? If you hold someone in contempt, who enforces that? I know.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
How do we sort through all this? That three of the most powerful people in the United States of America are liars, have lied to the American people, and they know that the American people know that they're lying.
I think that's one of the issues that is going to be really important in the next election is the overall corruption and stench that comes around the White House. And you take people who, were in previous positions, pretty straightforward people like, a William Barr, but people who spend their time sucking up to Donald Trump. It's like sucking up to a skunk. You're going to end up smelling real bad. And this is what's happening. There's a stench coming out from all of these people who I think, have gotten in that orbit of Donald Trump, and they can't help themselves from trying to just please him and be obsequious and say things they know aren't really true.
So some people are concluding that Donald Trump is his own ecosystem. He's his own planet, and he's got his own orbit, and that people get sucked in. James Comey wrote an op-ed piece, I don't know if you saw it this week, about how Trump infects everybody that is around him and how he does it because he never stops talking. He never stops talking. He just, insinuates everybody into his opinions, people realize that in order to stay around him, in order to be near the Oval Office, in order to be near this power that Donald Trump obviously has as president of the United States, they need to repeat what he says. They need to do what he says. And then their conscience kicks in and they realize, oh my God, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. But they are weak. They're weak people. Very weak-minded, no conscience whatsoever. They're all any way the wind blows doesn't really matter to me people. They're not people of any integrity, character, inner strength. They're just very weak men, and they are men. And they just, start doing what he wants them to do, hoping that, it'll end soon, or hoping that they can keep him from doing the really, really dangerous thing, like launching nuclear weapons or whatever, and that they are seriously, through all these people that have come and gone, we've never seen turnover like this. Through all these people who have come and gone, we have learned that it's impossible, that you can't save yourself. Look, Michael Cohen is going to go to jail after serving Donald Trump for what, 15 years as his fixer? He has served Donald Trump, loyally and without question and done illegal things. And he's the only one that is going to go to jail on Monday. On Monday, he's going to go to jail. I mean, freaking jail. His freedom will be taken away. He doesn't have a law license anymore because he's the one that took the fall for Donald Trump's law breaking, because Donald Trump has created an environment for himself where whatever he does, there's somebody who will protect him. And that's what he said. He was shopping. Remember what Jeff Sessions, his big complaint was, I thought he was supposed to protect me. And where's my Roy Cohen? Well, Roy Cohen is Bill Barr. Now, I don't know why this old man has decided, he had nothing better to do in his twilight years than, lie for Donald Trump. I'm not really sure what the payday is. Maybe he was promised a Supreme Court seat in the end. Who the hell knows what his deal is? But Bill Barr has got to be punished, because the same way that Michael Cohen has been punished. Any attorney. Now, listen, Michael Cohen was in private practice and he had the choice whether or not to break the law on behalf of his client. But Bill Barr is the Attorney General of the United States, and he's doing what Michael Cohen did as a private citizen as the head of the Justice Department, which will have a catastrophic effect on every single federal prosecution we try to bring from here on out, because serious criminals, I mean, I won't say serious criminals because the president is one. I'm talking violent criminals, can now argue that the entire justice system is, a politicized thing, and that, a jury might buy it. But both houses have the power to arrest those who have been lawfully subpoenaed to appear before them, or even to have them arrested. That's just a fact. That is what Congress can do. The Supreme Court has ruled the following: that the Constitution gives Congress broad authority to investigate matters of national interest as it considers what laws to pass. It includes surveys of deficits in our social, economic, or political system for the purpose of enabling Congress to remedy them. The Justice Department, the Supreme Court justices wrote, it comprehends probes into departments of the federal government to expose corruption, inefficiency, or waste. So yes, it is a legitimate purpose of Congress to expose corruption. And so yes, Congress has the authority, the broad authority, to arrest somebody. Now, on paper, defying a congressional subpoena for testimony or for documents, which Bill Barr has already done, is a crime punishable by 1 to 12 months in jail. Now, here's the dilemma. It's pretty much a toothless law. Why? Because in disputes between Congress and the executive branch, which this would be, the Justice Department, Bill Barr, can decline to charge an official who defies a subpoena at the president's direction. So you see, Bill Barr is in charge of his own freedom. If the president sticks by him, which is why the president is signaling to him, I got you back. Go ahead and break the law. Now, there's contempt. Can Congress hold Bill Barr in contempt? Yes. I don't know why people are on the TV saying, well, you know, we haven't done it in so long. It's been almost 100 years. Not true. We did it in 1935. And during the Watergate hearings, there was a threat to hold every one of Nixon's aides in contempt of Congress if they didn't testify. Sam Ervin was serious about it. And all of a sudden, all these aides showed up to testify. So that happened in 1935. That happened in the 70s, 73. Okay, so it's not that old and it's not that preposterous. The only thing is Congress doesn't have a prison for long-term detention. It's got, you know, the sergeant at arms, a limited security force, it's got the Capitol Police, right? And so I don't see why we don't use the police that we have, that Congress has, and put body cams on them and send them on over to Bill Barr's office and demand that Bill Barr surrender himself under the contempt laws and enforce it. Now, the president could pardon Bill Barr preemptively of contempt. But Congress could then go to a federal judge. And Congress could enforce that subpoena. And the federal judge could declare that person in federal contempt. Now, here's the rub. If the Justice Department, who is Bill Barr, declines to prosecute someone for contempt of court, the court would then appoint a special prosecutor to bring the case against Bill Barr instead. And again, Trump could preemptively pardon Bill Barr. So you see where all this goes, right? You see all this, where all of it goes. However, if we don't enforce the law as it is and allow for Trump to pardon Bill Barr or to, have a federal judge appoint a special prosecutor and Trump preemptively, all these scenarios where the president pardons Bill Barr, that has all got to be on television. All of it has to be on television. And yes, it is time to arrest Bill Barr. Now, I do realize what the court will say. I understand what a court says when a witness is in contempt of court. I understand. Here's what the court will do. And this is probably why you don't understand why Jerry Nadler said, well, I'll give it 2 or 3 days. The reason is because the first thing the court would order, and anybody who's ever been divorced in an ugly, messy court divorce setting knows this. So this applies to the federal law too. He will order the Congress and Bill Barr and the executive branch and the Justice Department to negotiate first. Any judge worth his salt would order that they try to work this all out amongst themselves first. It's like when you get divorced, they'll go, okay, well, why don't you try and mediate this before you take up all the time in the court like that? So that's what Congress is doing right now. They are trying to negotiate a settlement between Bill Barr allowing Don McGahn to testify, allowing Robert Mueller to testify, because Bill Barr controls all of it.
Mary had a little man. The fault.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The challenge we face is that if we don't stand up to him together today, we risk forever losing the power to stand up to any president in the future. Mm-hmm. The very system of government of the United States, the system of limited power, the system of Not having a president as a dictator is very much at stake.
Oh, my God.
The Attorney General of the United States is sworn to uphold the Constitution as our nation's chief law enforcement officer. He has an obligation to do everything in his power to warn the president of the damage he risks and the liability he assumes by directly threatening our system of checks and balances and of limited government. Sadly, the Attorney General has failed in that responsibility. He has failed to check the president's worst instincts. He has not only misrepresented the findings of the special counsel, he has failed to protect the special counsel's investigation from unfair political attacks. He has himself unfairly attacked the special counsel's investigation. He has failed the men and women of the Department of Justice by placing the needs of the president over the fair administration of justice. He has even failed to show up today. Yes, we will continue to negotiate for access to the full report for another couple of days. And yes, we will have no choice but to move quickly to hold the Attorney General in contempt if he stalls or fails to negotiate in good faith.
Right.
But the Attorney General must make a choice. Every one of us must make the same choice. That choice is now an obligation of our office. The choice is simple. We can stand up to this president in defense of the country and the Constitution and the liberty we love, or we can let the moment pass us by. I do not, and we have seen in other countries what happens when you allow such moments to pass by.
Yeah.
I do not know what Attorney General Barr will choose. I do not know what my Republican colleagues will choose. But I am certain that there is no way forward for this country that does not include a reckoning with this clear and present danger to our constitutional order. History will judge us for how we face this challenge. We will all be held accountable in one way or the other. And if he does not provide this committee with the information it demands and the respect it deserves, Mr. Barr's moment of accountability will come soon enough.
So that's the choice. It's kind of binary. Do you actually hold Barr in contempt and ask a court to appoint a special prosecutor to prosecute him because, frankly, he is the Department of Justice, so he's in charge of his own freedom. He's also in charge of all the witnesses. He's in charge of Bob Mueller. Bob Mueller works for the Department of Justice, and Bill Barr has to say it's okay for Mueller to show up. Same with Don McGahn. Same with Michael Flynn. Same with anybody that worked in the Trump administration. Anybody. The president has issued a blanket edict. He will not observe or comply with any subpoenas. None of them. He will go to court. So the president has used court in business repeatedly. Why? Because he's a billionaire and he threatens to sue you as a small contractor who maybe, painted, the Taj Mahal and didn't get paid. And he says, okay, fine, sue me. Sue me. I'll see you in court because that small contractor can't match the money that Donald Trump is able to put into defending himself from your lawsuit. Or if he files a lawsuit against you, he knows you can't defend yourself because it'll cost you millions of dollars, years of your time, endless billable hours, and you'll give up. The thing is here, this isn't a business. Although Donald Trump thinks the United States is nothing more than a business. This is the United States of America, and there is no question of money in play. There's plenty of money to defend against the president. That's just a gimme. Problem is, the Justice Department is controlled by a dirty guy. The Justice Department is controlled by an attorney general who has displayed the fact that he is using his office to defend the president and not the American people from corruption, but that he will actually enable and assist and abet and aid in the corruption. Now, we need to get to the Supreme Court because anything that's done with corrupt intent, an invocation of executive privilege, a pardon, for the Department of Justice, for the Attorney General. Any of those things that are done with corrupt intent are no longer protected powers. And so the shortest, fastest, best, most direct route to the Supreme Court is to arrest Bill Barr. If we don't, Donald Trump will run the clock. Donald Trump will go to court. Donald Trump will let you go to court. Donald Trump will fight you in court. The AG will fight the Congress in court. Judges could actually grant permission to release the unredacted report or to release 6E material. All you got to do is go to Judge Howell in the District of Columbia and ask him if Congress can have the 6E material, the actual testimony from the actual witnesses that they actually gave under actual oath to an actual grand jury under penalty of perjury. And Judge Howell will probably say yes. He will probably issue a court order permitting the members of Congress to have access to the grand jury information. Barr would oppose that request and appeal it. And it'll go from the district court to the appeals court, and whoever loses in the appeals court would then ask the Supreme Court to hear it, and that could take 18 months. Therein is what Donald Trump knows. That is what every person who is watching this, who has a cursory idea and understanding of the co-equal branches of government, of the Constitution, of the Attorney General's job, of the president, and of the various laws that are in place, knows. But if you fought Bill Barr and you actually imprisoned Bill Barr, it would, and get it on videotape, whether or not he surrenders, whether or not he curses at them, whether or not he tells them to get the F out of his office. The American people have a right to see this. They have a right to know.
He refuses to testify before the House. Now, there is some negotiation going on. Maybe he will testify before the House. But there is an old precedent in this country under the Constitution of the United States, affirmed by the Supreme Court, that says that the House and the Senate, each chamber, has an inherent power to compel a witness to testify if that witness just refuses. And that includes arrest, and even includes jail. And we forget that because it's been such a long time. It's been 1935, 34 since that happened. But it's there, and the Supreme Court has affirmed that authority. And the reason I put that out there is because, and that was even before Nancy Pelosi said what she said today, because we really have to think of this in terms of a constitutional crisis. If the president and the administration are stonewalling and they say there will be absolutely no information, no testimony, no report, no Mueller report that goes to the House, then the House is powerless unless the House takes some action.
That's Robert Reich, our former labor secretary, and he's exactly right, because this is not just about the Mueller investigation, although that is front and center in everybody's mind because of the really piss poor performance and the Bill Barr told you nothing, but he showed you everything. He showed you he's the president's attorney and that he's misusing the Department of Justice, all right? But this has to do with the president violating the subpoena for his tax returns when the law clearly states shall furnish, right? And the security clearance issue, that the president is giving people who are disqualified from seeing our most closely kept secrets, how we defend ourselves, how we prevent cyber attacks. And he's giving that information to guys like Jared Kushner who are disqualified. All of this, there will be no questioning of any of that. And that means Congress cannot function as a co-equal branch of government and protect the American people from illegal activity committed by the president.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What more would you have asked the Attorney General had he come to your committee tomorrow?
I would have asked him, why did he sit on the Mueller letter for so long? Because he clearly mischaracterized the Mueller report in his 4-page summary. Then he's told that he did that by Robert Mueller. And then the Attorney General goes out and lies to Congress twice and then does a press conference misleading the American people. That's beyond the pale. I would have asked him about those series of actions and how he could have done that knowing that Robert Mueller sent him a letter basically saying, stop mischaracterizing my report.
I should add that I'm just being told, as we've been talking, that Chairman Nadler has said that he now believes that Special Counsel Robert Mueller will appear before the Congress in the middle of May. Do you have any information about that? Can you confirm that?
I don't know the specific date, but I know we have been asking Robert Mueller to come before the committee. There's no reason that he shouldn't come or wouldn't come because prior special counsel and special prosecutors have come before Congress. And again, this is just normal fact gathering that we're trying to do. And it's Republicans in the White House that have openly said they're going to try to stop Congress from getting the information that we can have and share with the American people.
Congressman, I want to come back now to the Attorney General because, as we mentioned earlier, you are one of the Democrats who've called on the Attorney General to step down. Now that we know about the complaints, or rather the letter that went from the special counsel to the Attorney General after the Attorney General issued his own conclusions about the report. Why are you calling on him to step down?
Because Attorney General Bill Barr has perjured himself in Congress twice. He had the Mueller letter, and then he testified in Congress, both in the House and the Senate, when asked direct questions about whether Robert Mueller agreed with Bill Barr's conclusions and whether Bill Barr had any knowledge about why staff members of the special counsel's office would be upset with his characterization. In both cases, he basically answered no, and he was lying in those cases. He also misled the American people, both with his press conference before we ever read the Mueller report and with his 4-page inaccurate summary. So Bill Barr wants to do this. If he wants to mislead the American people, he can do that as a member of the Trump campaign, but he can't do that as Attorney General. That is a position that requires independence, integrity, and an oath to the Constitution. Because he doesn't understand his job, he needs to resign.
Exactly. He doesn't understand his job. But you see, Bill Barr is the guy. He's the go-to guy if you want to end an investigation or clear people or get people pardoned after they've actually been shown to have committed crimes against the United States, like selling tow missiles to Iran in exchange for hostages, and then taking the money and laundering it through Saudi Arabia through a guy like Oliver North, and then taking that money, buying drugs with it in Central America, and then shipping those drugs to South Central Los Angeles in order to increase its value, and then taking the profits and fighting an illegal war. You see, and this is all repeating itself. And, the same players, it's the same cast of characters. It's Elliot Abrams. It's still, Oliver North, except this time he's over at the NRA and funneling money from Russia instead of Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's just the same exact crap. Same thing over and over again. But Donald Trump has his sights set on becoming a dictator. That's what he wanted all along, the power for the president to rule as he wants, without any of these questions, without any of these investigations that happened, even though Bill Barr was called in at the end to pardon Caspar Weinberger, to pardon all the people that were found to be guilty or were facing trial for committing crimes against this country. That's Bill Barr. That's who he is. And then he went to became a lobbyist for big corporate America and made his money. Kate in Colorado.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
The reason I'm calling is, how can he stop McGahn from testifying when he testified for 30 hours for Mueller?
Well, he can actually say that Don McGahn is a former employee of the White House, and they're claiming executive privilege, even though you and I and everybody else knows that it's been waived. Then it goes to court, so it slows it all down.
Right. And then what about Mueller? Can he stop him from testifying?
Yes, Mueller works for the Department of Justice. And just think about this, okay? People are saying, privately to me, well, Mueller's got to quit the Department of Justice. All right, let's say he does. Let's say he quits. Guess what he can't talk about?
The investigation.
Right. He can't talk about ongoing investigations. He can't talk about 6E material, grand jury testimony. He can't talk about, anything that's not been made public in his report. He can't, the one thing he could do is call Bill Barr a liar. That's what he could do.
Well, he kind of did that with that letter.
Yeah, he did do that with that letter. And by the way, Lindsey Graham wrote Bob Mueller a letter. And so Lindsey Graham's an idiot because this invites Mueller to reply, to respond. And I'm sure he will. He wrote to Robert Mueller today, and he said, Dear Mr. Mueller, thank you and your team very much for the professional and thorough manner in which you conducted your investigation. I appreciate the service you've provided the country now and throughout your entire life. And then he says, on the eve of Attorney General Barr's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, several news outlets, it's going to be about the news outlets, is it, broke a story alleging that you believed Attorney General Barr's March 24 letter to this committee, quote, did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of your investigation. That's everything, by the way. That's every...
And he didn't even read it all.
Right, he did. And he said, and of course, Attorney General Barr has since released your report to the public, including your executive summaries with redactions deemed necessary, da-da-da-da-da. Then he goes, in response to questions by Senator Blumenthal, the Attorney General testified, in essence, that you told him in a phone call that you didn't challenge the accuracy of the Attorney General's summary of your report's principal conclusions, but rather you wanted more of the report, particularly the executive summaries concerning obstruction of justice, to be released promptly. In particular, Attorney General Barr testified that you believed media coverage of your investigation was unfair. Please inform the committee if you'd like to provide testimony regarding any misinterpretation by the Attorney General of the substance of that phone call. So now Mueller has to respond, and I'm sure he will, in writing.
Right. Well, what about Chris Wallace?
Remember, the only reason why Mueller wrote that letter is to create a record. That's why he didn't handle it with a phone call. Because remember, this is the snitty comment, right, where Bill Barr testifies. So I actually said to him, Bob, why aren't you calling me? Why are you writing this letter? Because I thought the letter was kind of snitty, and I think it was probably written by staffers, which makes him a real big liar, because he had testified that he doesn't talk to the staffers. He talks to Bob himself and blah, 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 right? But, he's a liar. He's a horrible human being. He's a terrible man. He's the reason why people hate lawyers. He is.
Yeah.
So, but yes, there's a lot of stuff that they... What?
Chris Wallace and Laura Ingraham. Have you talked about that?
Chris Wallace and Laura Ingraham.
Chris Wallace was saying that the letter shows obstruction of justice, and then Laura Ingraham was fighting with him, interrupted a news broadcast from another Fox News person to say that... that he's going along with the other media, and that you didn't hear about that?
No.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
So I think she was talking about this.
I know there's some people who don't think that this March 27th letter is a big deal, and some opinion people who appear on this network who may be pushing a political agenda, but we have to deal in facts, and the fact is that this letter from the special counsel, and it was one of at least 3 contacts with the Attorney General between March 25th and March 27th, was a clear indication that the Attorney General was upset, very upset, with the letter that had been sent out by the Attorney General and wanted it changed, or wanted at least added to, and the Attorney General refused to do so. He felt the Attorney General's letter was inaccurate. He says in the conversation he was talking about media coverage. That's not what he said in the letter. What he says in the letter is you didn't reflect what we found in the report.
Right.
And there are a lot of people, having read now the full report, or as much as it has been not redacted, agree that he didn't reveal what was fully in the report. Again, those aren't opinions. That's not a political agenda. Those are the facts.
Right. And then apparently the opinion hosts started to attack the news guy, Chris Wallace at Fox News. Yeah, I don't, I can't really care that much about the lies that go on that propaganda channel during the opinion shows because, look, on a good day, they're reaching 3 million people. And, that's just not the bulk of America. Everybody that tuned in to Bill Barr's testimony knows that Bill Barr lied. People who, the #1 bestseller on Amazon and the New York Times bestseller list is the Mueller report. And you just got to keep your fingers crossed that America is wading through it in their own way, on the toilet, on vacation, at the beach, whatever they're, wherever they do their reading. And they are realizing that Bill Barr totally did what Mueller accused him of doing, mischaracterized the substance of what Mueller found. And what Mueller found was that there were over 200 contacts between, and this was what Mueller was charged with doing, to find out if the Russians systematically engaged in our elections. The answer is clearly yes. And did anybody in the Trump campaign or in Trump's orbit help that to happen? And clearly he found that it did happen. And that, yes, there were many people on the Trump campaign, many people in Trump's orbit, Roger Stone, Jerome Corsi, all these people that were coordinating. But coordination is not a crime, according to Mueller. And so he applied the conspiracy law and met one standard of the conspiracy law, but not the second. The second was a meeting of the minds, meaning did they, Putin and Trump, sit down together, which is what all these back channels were about. It was about putting Trump in the same room with Putin over and over and over. That's what Papadopoulos was trying to do. That's what Michael Cohen was trying to do. That's what Felix Sater was trying to do. They were all trying to get a meeting between Putin and Trump. And Trump and Putin were both smart enough to not meet with each other during the campaign. But every other thing that you have to check off for conspiracy happened. That's what Mueller found. That there was collusion, but there was no meeting between the government of Russia and Donald Trump or any of Donald Trump's campaign people. No one met with Putin. Now, they did talk to the GRU, the intelligence operatives. See, God is speaking, just so you know. It's really storming here. So that all happened, and that's just a fact. And it's and today Donald Trump sat in the Oval Office and said that he had spent an hour on the phone with Vladimir Putin today, Friday, May 3rd. And that Putin was laughing at the Mueller report. He was laughing at it. And so was Trump. And when the reporters asked him, well, did you tell him to get out of our elections? Because Mueller clearly found that they had massively infiltrated our elections. Massively. And nobody knows whether any votes were changed because, Mueller wasn't charged with finding that out. He said, excuse me, I'm talking over here. No, it didn't come up. That's what he said today.
Did you address the election meddling issues that came up in the Mueller report with Mr. Putin today?
We discussed it. He actually sort of smiled when he said something to the effect that it started off as a mountain and it ended up being a mouse. But he knew that because he knew there was no collusion whatsoever. So pretty much that's what it was.
Did you tell him not to meddle, Mr. President? Did you tell him not to meddle in the next election?
Excuse me. I'm answering this question. You are very rude. So we had a good conversation about many different things. Okay?
Did you ask him not
to meddle in the next election?
We didn't discuss that. Really, we didn't discuss it. We discussed 5 or 6 things.
I mean, that is an amazing thing that the president of the United States did not stand up to the people, to the government, to the head of the government, to the head of the Russian Federation, who ordered his intelligence operatives, who ordered the GRU, which is his CIA, to infiltrate in a systemic way the American election. It didn't come up. It didn't come up. It didn't come up. The man will not protect and defend the United States. He won't protect and defend the United States against anything. Nothing. Nothing at all. And this idea that there was no collusion, that is untrue. That is not what Mueller found. Mueller found 7 different layers of things that AG Barr misrepresented. Here's what Mueller wrote. The evidence, and this is on the conspiracy, the evidence did not establish Trump campaign participation in a criminal conspiracy with the Russians. But he also made clear that this report and that this investigation did not establish particular facts. That doesn't mean there was no evidence of those facts. It meant that people lied and destroyed documents and were using apps that were encrypted that didn't save their text messages, which is also what Mueller writes in the report. And that destruction of evidence and that kind of lying to the special counsel, to Congress, materially, and that's a big word in law, materially impacted his investigation. And Barr keeps saying no collusion. And Barr keeps saying no evidence. And that is not what Mueller found. Conspiracy is a criminal charge. Collusion is a colloquial term.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Why not call for Mueller to testify?
Because I'm not going to do any more. Enough already. It's over. If there's any dispute about a conversation, then he'll come. But I'm not going to retry the case. I'm not calling McCann. It is over.
Wow, he is a real lapdog, man. He really is.
Trump is a f***ing idiot.
And now he's like, it's done. It's over. So the Russians attacked us, and we're not going to do anything because it's done. It's so sick. It's so sick. The president sat in the Oval Office today and told the reporters that he doesn't even bring up the Russian interference in our elections with Vladimir Putin. He doesn't even bring it up. Excuse me, I'm talking. You're very rude. You're very weak. You're very weak and you're very mealy-mouthed about the security of the United States of America. You don't take any of it seriously because you're a globalist and you're looking to, increase your reach around the globe at the expense of this country, this democracy, this Constitution. He is running this place like a banana republic dictator runs banana republics. And that is not what I, would hope and dream for your children in America. It's really pretty sick. Rick in L.A.
Hey, how's it going, Randy?
All right.
Hey, by the way, I love your new studio. I think the clarity of the picture is wonderful. I love the backdrop behind your desk.
No, well, thank you. I still think that screen is too far away and too high. I think it should have been lower and but we can't get the guy to come back. He already got paid.
Well, there you go.
Oh, and speaking of getting paid, it was the first of the month, May 1st. I didn't say a word. I didn't say anything. Please do your monthly tithing. Support this here show. Yeah, I mean, it's been a very expensive few months for us. So buy a stinking podcast, buy a T-shirt, buy a hat. Just make a flat-out donation. I'll send you a personal thank you if you do. Please do that.
Yeah. My favorite shot is when it's hitting you straight on the camera. That's the best.
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah,
that's the really expensive camera, that one right there.
Okay.
The one over here is the old camera. That's why it looks different. But the one here is that's the old camera. That's the old camera that you're looking at right now. And then switch over to the new camera. See, that's the brand new camera. And you could come in closer if you want, Brett. See, that camera.
Okay.
That camera. See, that camera is remotely controlled. That's why it was so expensive.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. Ooh,
Yeah.
that was smooth, dude. Love that. Okay.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, I'm calling about the that little-known prison in the basement of the U.S. Capitol that is waiting for a new occupant. The bar to justice, the Bill Barr to justice.
Oh, yeah. We do need to arrest him. I mean, there's just no way to get to the Supreme Court fast enough to, Donald Trump is going to run out the clock with all this, back and forth. This is all stalling. This is all tactics. Okay, and we need to be not tactical. We need to be strategic, and the strategy should be to force Bill Barr to make his case to the Supreme Court, and tell him why lying to Congress or defying a subpoena, a congressional subpoena, is not a crime. That's
what would be so sweet is if he has to file a writ of habeas corpus to be released from from the House jail.
Right. That's why I'm saying.
Beautiful?
Yeah, it would be beautiful, and that's why I'm saying that it needs to happen. And of course, the Capitol Police have to execute it. The Sergeant at Arms needs to be deployed, and please make sure, Nancy, that he's wearing a body camera so that the entire confrontation, hopefully peaceful, can be recorded and shown to the American people, and you could see this little weasel man being arrested.
I mean, that guy is the biggest dissembler. I mean, he makes John Mitchell look like an honest man.
He does. Yes, he does.
Doesn't he?
Yes.
And what is that saying?
Well, that's saying that he's as corrupt can get, and that he is, that these people literally will sell out the rule of law, which protects all of us, from violent criminals, from drug dealers. I mean, the rule of law is the one thing that and you know what's really interesting to me is everybody's waiting for democracy to kick in. Everybody thinks the democracy is just going to kick in and it's all going to be okay. If you destroy the democracy, nobody's going to come and save you. Okay, it won't happen. And so
we are the people.
We are the people, and the people have to come and arrest, and they have to arrest Bill Barr.
Bold action. Has to be bold action.
We have to get into the court. We have to get into the Supreme Court because, believe it or not, I don't think that Justice Roberts or Alito are down with any of this. I think Kavanaugh is. I don't know where Gorsuch would fall, but I'm sure that Alito, I'm sure that Roberts, along with Eleanor and with Sotomayor and Ginsburg, we have a block of 5 that will enforce the law. I really do believe that.
I hope so.
But we need to get in there. Well, we need to find out because everyone needs to know if democracy is over or if it's still intact. And the only way to know is if the Supreme Court weighs in, because that's all that's left.
Like Chairman Matt Nadler said, is this going to be a dictatorship or a democracy? That's really the choice we have.
And he said that as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House while in session.
Yeah. What does that tell you about where we've gone?
Right.
Country? We're in trouble, Randy. We need
Normally, if somebody would say that, the president's a dictator, or in an open, somebody would move to take his words down, or somebody would move to censure the member. Nobody did. Nobody did because everyone knows that is not debatable. It's just that the Republicans are down with it.
Well, were there any Republicans at that hearing when Nadler spoke? I doubt it.
It doesn't matter. They can still, make a motion to take down his words for what he said as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and nobody has. Yeah. Nobody has.
Yeah. Well, anyway, great show, Randy.
Thank
I'll
you.
move on so you can get to somebody else.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Please do support the show. And here's Robert Reich explaining to you that if we don't arrest Bill Barr, otherwise, here's what happens.
Otherwise, the Trump administration can just run out the clock.
Right.
In other words, Congress could decide, the House could decide to hold a witness in contempt, which is criminal, and then it would just languish through the courts. And because the Justice Department really runs the show, it could take another year and a half, and then the clock runs out. The way to expedite this issue up to the Supreme Court and not let the Trump administration run the clock is to actually act on the constitutional authority that the House has. And that constitutional authority, as I said, enshrined in a Supreme Court case, I think it was called Journey versus McCracken, 1935. You go look back at it. It's very clear that the House could actually do that. But in so threatening, it would, and even if you had the Sergeant at Arms of the House go over to the Justice Department, I mean, I doubt that there would actually be such a clash, but you would have to get it would force the Trump administration to get an injunction in court, and that would be expedited, I expect, up to the Supreme Court.
Right, and that's why he has to be arrested. And, Robert Reich doesn't envision a big clash between the arresting officer and Barr, and neither do I. But the arresting officer needs to memorialize the arrest of the Attorney General on a body cam. And yes, they would do a writ of habeas corpus, as Rick says. Rick is a lawyer, by the way, and they would go to the Supreme Court right away. And it's the only way to get in front of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's all that's left. You understand that? And I know a lot of people think the Supreme Court's packed with friendlies and stuff, but there is Roberts, there is Alito, and of course we have Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who would be the three, and then we would need two more. I don't think Clarence would mind seeing this place become a banana republic with a dictator. I don't think Kavanaugh would mind either. I don't know how Gorsuch feels about contempt because his mother was held in contempt. Okay, just saying. But I don't think that Roberts and Alito believe that democracy should come to a screeching halt at the direction of one Donald Trump and his dirty attorney general. I just don't. But we need to get into the Supreme Court, and we need to do it as fast as possible. And the most direct, fastest way, as I said at the beginning of the show, is to arrest Bill Barr. Andy in Minnesota.
Hey, Randy, how are you?
I'm good. Please support the show. Thank you, everybody. I just forgot to, do the appeal on May 1st, and so, yeah.
Well, right. Well, you got to. You spent all that money, and it looks great.
I did spend a lot of money, and apparently for nothing, but I did.
Well, keep it up. I'm just really
you keep it up. You're the man.
Over this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I had, two uncles that one of them fought on New Guinea and got shot, and one was on the death march of Bataan and survived it. And they were lifelong Democrats. And if they saw this right now, they would be livid.
Oh, my dad. I know. Yeah.
I can't believe the complacency, I don't see anybody that seems to be worried one bit about this, And I'm freaking out.
I'm freaking out, too, because, we stand on that wall. We protect the millennials who, think the whole world is on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And, and it's because they have no skin in the game. You talk about your dad and I talk about my dad who beat back fascism. Our kids don't have any skin in the game. There is no more draft, okay? The last time you saw young people motivated to fight was when there was a draft. Have a great weekend. Stay tuned for the Randi Rhodes After Hours podcast.